a special featured guest, Tammy Kotsev. So just by way of background, Tammy is, and if any of you on here are part of the Relentless Guardian movement, you know I talk about relentlessness, tenacity, urgency, and the need to go after the result that you're trying to achieve. And I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Tammy is the ultimate embodiment of tenacity, relentlessness, and persistence. This person doesn't know how to give up, right? And she has used it to rocket herself into amazing positions of prominence where she rightfully belongs. She has used it to achieve amazing results in negotiating impossible cases. Yes, Tammy. And she has also used that tenacity to bring about change in her personal and professional life and with others, and especially with me, right? So Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, and thank you for being here.
Sure, thank you. That was a wonderful introduction, Michael. I will say that it's not always a compliment when people call me relentless, but I will always believe that it is one.
For me, it is.
I started working at Callagy Law in 2013, right after I graduated law school. I actually worked very closely with Michael. I moved through many of the departments at Callagy Law, really focusing a lot on the healthcare recovery end. And I recently left over the summer. And even though I left, they're still my family and my friends. In fact, we do some work together. And I work as a managed care reimbursement attorney for Prime Healthcare. And we have 45 hospitals across 14 states. So locally, we have 3 hospitals in New Jersey. And that's what I oversee, 3 in Pennsylvania and 2 in Michigan.
Wow. So things must be particularly crazy and kooky for you right now. Is that fair?
Absolutely. And since I deal on the managed care reimbursement end, we're kind of thinking forward, what's it going to look like for us on the reimbursement end? Because right now what you're seeing is that with the CARES Act, that all the testing, co-pays, and co-insurance, that has to be covered by your insurance company. But a lot of the primary big insurance companies are now saying we're also going to cover the co-insurance, co-pays for any treatment, which we can imagine what that might look like with people who are doing hospital stays, 3-4 weeks at a time. So, yeah. But sometimes insurance companies have short memories and they may make these promises and then they can find ways to kind of back out of it, maybe saying that, the stay was not completely related to COVID. So, we're definitely, I'm prepping for, 6 months to a year where I'm probably going to see my work amping up for the hospital.
Sure. And so Tammy, and I'm going to talk to you about this more generally, but I'd like for you to weigh in on this. The purpose of managed care and the need to implement co-payments, deductibles, and co-insurance, whatever the stated reasons are, the actual economic impact of that is that people don't go and seek treatment, right? Especially people who live on fixed income. They will push their treatment to the latest point possible. Because treatment is expensive, right? Co-pays, co-insurance, deductibles are expensive, they're complicated. And so people don't treat, right? So can you talk a little bit about the importance of the new stimulus package, essentially ordering, requesting, directing insurance companies to waive this obligation, because we really want to get this out to people who are reconsidering treatment, delaying treatment, and things of that nature that could potentially be coronavirus or something similar?
Well, I think it's important for 2 fronts. First, for patients who need to seek treatment, because if you're close to an emergency room and maybe they're not necessarily in your network, you're looking at a much higher copay deductible, and then if you're admitted, that could skyrocket. And as we know, that has bankrupted people. And it also, on the flip side, for the hospitals, it doesn't benefit them, because how can hospitals treat patients and not get paid? So obviously you're not going to refuse patients. According to EMTALA, you must always pre-screen and stabilize any patients who are presented to your ER. So what do you do at that point? So I think with the CARES Act and what a lot of these insurance carriers are doing is really helping everybody get access to treatment who needs it. If you're underinsured or you just can't afford those costly co-pays and deductibles, but it's also allowing the hospitals to kind of take a deep breath and say, okay, at least we know we're going to be paid, because very often the co-pays, the co-insurance, it doesn't always get collected, especially on large bills.
Right. And so you kind of moved quickly through something, and I want to make sure that we go slow with this because a lot of people have questions about this. You said the word EMTALA, which doesn't sound like an English word at all. Could you walk me through a little bit? What is EMTALA and what does that mean to people who are either underinsured or uninsured at this time?
So basically, if you present, I'll keep it very simple. This is a federal law, which means that your state cannot limit this in any way. So no matter where you are, no matter what the local rules are, it's going to follow the federal regulation, which basically says if you present to an emergency room, you cannot get turned away because of your insurance status. And they have to screen you, which means they're going to evaluate you, basically assess your situation, whether or not you need continued care, and if you need something called stabilization. So stabilization doesn't mean, and again, I'm not a doctor, it doesn't mean that you can walk out of the hospital and you're perfectly fine. It just means that you don't need that immediate medical emergency. You're not in an unstabilized state. So you could be stabilized and then you could be transferred to another facility, maybe if you want to go to a different hospital that maybe would cover your treatment, but you can't be turned away. So you need to be screened and you need to be stabilized. And this applies to all hospitals. It doesn't matter the network. It doesn't matter if it's private, it's for profit, nonprofit. Everybody has to abide by these guidelines.
Beautiful, thank you. And so, just in short, what Tammy is sharing is that there is a federal law that is on point that says that if you are unstable, meaning in a medical emergency or need urgent care, and you present to an emergency room, whether you can pay, whether you have insurance, whether you don't have insurance, whether you have enough insurance, doesn't matter. Hospitals and emergency rooms in particular have a legal obligation to first stabilize you. And once they've stabilized you, then they can start trying to figure out a way to say, hey, look, we can't treat you with this. We can potentially treat you like that. We may have to transfer you. We may have to figure those things out. So hospitals do have that obligation. They usually do really well with it, right? It's almost as if, at least my experience with hospitals is that they actually view that as part of their civic responsibility and their duties. And so they really do care about taking care of patients, and they don't need a federal law to tell them to do that. They will do that generally. And I think Tammy works for some amazing organizations that really do, that is part of their purpose and mission. And so, Tammy, of course, ending up in a beautiful place like that, is just consistent with her and her personality. So Tammy, tell me a little bit about this. Most people who have insurance policies, they have to deal with issues with their insurance company saying things like, hey, this isn't a covered service, or hey, the treatment that you received, we're only going to pay this amount of money. We're not going to pay this amount of money. Like, how, in your experience in dealing generally with insurance companies, how do you respond to those kinds of things? So you get an explanation of benefits with a $1,000 bill or $2,000 bill, and the insurance company says, yeah, we're going to pay $200 of that, and the other responsibility, the $1,800, is your responsibility. How do you generally handle those kinds of issues for people who get a letter like that?
Well, I would say that you have to be your own advocate, and you really need to think about this before you go and seek treatment. You need to make sure that where you're going, that it's covered, it's a network, any authorizations, even if it's not intuitive that you would need an authorization, assume you need an authorization for everything. Ask questions, document, especially in writing through email, because then when you do get that bill, you can say, look, I got my authorization, my doctor called, I called, and many times they will go back and they'll reevaluate. If you don't have an advocate, you can also turn to a law firm if you have a really high bill, and they might be able to help you. I know my time at Callaghan Law, we represented a lot of different providers who were in this situation, and I will tell you that we wouldn't have collected billions of dollars for providers from insurance companies if the insurance company was getting it right every time. So they will admit when they're wrong. You just need to sometimes strong arm them a little bit.
That's
so
a
I
nice
think,
way to put it.
yeah, be your own advocate and don't be afraid to call. You're going to have to wait on hold, but that's exactly the tactic that they put in place, because they know most people don't have time. They won't wait on hold. They won't, keep asking those questions, doing their own research to see what should be covered. But that's really what you have to do. And, they expect that most people aren't going to do that, and they'll just pay the extra $800. So that's my best advice is be your own advocate. And if you don't want to be one and you can afford one, find an advocate who will, go and fight the insurance companies for you.
So now we're going to have a fun conversation about advocacy, because Tammy is, one of the most aggressive, tenacious, relentless attorneys I've ever run into. Can I ask you this question, Tammy? This is a hard hitter. You ready? What does truth and advocacy mean to you?
Well, it means to me, you have to always come from integrity. So you're not disingenuous. It's truly what you believe is the right thing to do. And sometimes, you know, as someone who advocates for clients, sometimes you have to tell them, look, your position really isn't correct. Because that, I believe that when you have that integrity, that's what makes you fight so much harder and not accept the status quo. Because so many people do accept the status quo, you know, when it comes to whether they're, you know, fighting in the reimbursement world and they're taking settlements, you know, they assume you're just going to take what's given to you. But in order for you to really fight, you have to have that integrity on your side. And to me, that's what truth and advocacy means. And, you know, I think attorneys get a bad rap. And, you know, I personally would never work with anyone who had the typical cliches that they talk about attorneys, which is why I was at Callagy for so long. So, you know, that's what I'm drawn to. You know, if you asked me when I was 5 years old, I would have told you that I wanted to be an attorney. It's something that I've always wanted to do because I believe in justice. And I think that, you know, not everyone could do it on their own. And there are people who put here in this world who can help people get the justice that they deserve. But it's important that you're always coming from integrity because there's nothing more important than that. And that's something that a gentleman, Michael Smikun, told me when I first started working at Callagy. So I think he believes the same thing as me.
So, but tell us, because there's, you approach achieving outcomes uniquely well because of that inner, that tenacity that you have. What is it that drives you to go, like, this is what's right, and I'm gonna get what's right? Because it's not common, right, amongst attorneys. It's not common in society. There's people who are confrontational and aggressive, but like crazy confrontational aggressive. And then there's people who are extremely passive, right? Who are just like, well, I guess this is what's supposed to happen. This is what's gonna happen, and they don't fight, right? And there's this fine line, a very small margin of like appropriate aggression, right? And confrontation. And then there's the tenacity to do it continuously, which you were uniquely good at. So what was it that drove you to fight as aggressively as you did, as tenaciously as you did, to achieve the outcomes that you were trying to achieve? What was it that drove you?
I think that, you know, when I'm presented with the challenge where now I need to go and fight for, let's just say an example would be a settlement. And, you know, maybe our case isn't as strong, but, you know, I know that our client should be paid appropriately. And it's very egregious what was maybe reimbursed. So I first need to understand that there's an option, that we're not limited. Like the insurance company can, you know, they can pay more money, or if it's some other type of settlement that you might be working out. So as long as there's an option, I believe that you can't take no for an answer. Most people are programmed just to say no, and they don't even listen to what you're saying. So one of the popular things that I will say to somebody who's telling me no, I'll say, can you explain what I want to me? Because if they don't fully understand, you know, what I'm asking for, then they really can't, you know, compromise. They can't give me a solution. So if I believe that there's just any kind of resolution that's possible, then I will always persevere. And that's why I don't like to take no for an answer. But I'm not unreasonable. I understand the limits, and I think that will go along with your reputation. So if you show that you're reasonable and you're going to work with people, people will want to work back with you. You know, there'll be that reciprocity because they know that you're genuine. You don't just come and say, give me more every single time. So I think it's a balance of being tenacious, not taking no for an answer, but also knowing when that's appropriate so that you have that reputation and people want to work things out with you.
Right, so can I offer a quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Pete.
A quick reframe of something. And one of the things I offer to the, you know, everyone that knows me knows I'm not a legal wizard by any stretch of the imagination. That's where I can't add value there. But where I can add value is by listening to your dialogue and offering some reframes. Lots of people, myself included, are up for a fight. Lots of people are not up for a fight. And I think it's maybe better to say representing yourself and your truth aggressively is a more positive message. Because I think a lot of people, as soon as you say, we're going to fight, they go, I don't want to fight. So they step back. And I say this because, stupid example, I wanted a refund from Avis because I left the US early because of the COVID stuff. And they sent me after 15 days, the letter that says we have reviewed this and we are of the opinion that no refund is issued and we regard this as the end of the matter. And I shared it with a friend and he went, oh, yeah, okay. I went, what do you mean, okay? And he's like, well, they've said they regard it as the end of the matter. I'm like, okay, well, they might regard it as the end of the matter, but I do not regard it as the end of the matter. And in any relationship, it requires two people to reach that agreement before that's all done and dusted. So I just think that it might be just as a point of reference for anyone on this, it doesn't have to be a fight. You can just carry on representing yourself even aggressively, just continually. And then when it does get to that level, yes, then maybe a lawyer has to come on board and switch it up a notch and change some energy around. But you just keep going at it.
Yeah, look, Peter, I could not agree more. And I want to touch on something that Tammy said, because I think it's so critical to this dialogue. What makes, I think, Tammy uniquely good at doing what she does, right, in terms of being relentless, being tenacious, and getting to an outcome, she mentioned integrity, but I think that's a small piece of it, right, is that you have to view confrontation not as a negative thing, right? Confrontation feels like fight, feels negative, feels like pain, feels uncomfortable. But if you change your association with confrontation to something like truth, right? Agreement, resolution, confrontation becomes a tool to get to those positive things. And Tammy mentioned the following, right? She mentioned 3 things, and she's so beautiful because there's so much value in what she has to say, and then she kind of just like drops it because it's just like mic dropper, like critical stuff, and she's like, yeah, of course. But for a lot of people, it's not of course, right? You said when you're on the phone with your adversary, they will say no, they want to say no, and they're not listening, right? They will say no, they want to say no, and they're not listening. Right? So you have this default to no, right? Or this default to falsity, like, I don't believe what you have to say. I don't care what you have to say. The answer is no, that you have to break through. And if you are non-confrontational, meaning you don't address the point directly, you don't attack it directly without any avoidance, right? Go right at the heart of it to the truth of the matter, right? If it is truth, right? Because if they're going no, 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 and what you're saying are full of lies, then yeah, they have every reason to say no. But if they're not listening and there is truth behind what you're saying, confrontation is the only way to break through. So is it fair to say that one of the things that you don't allow to happen, and this is what, like, there's this funny like thing where it's like, oh, they're so argumentative, they're so aggressive, they're so confrontational. Like, what is it about when people are not listening to your truth that you go, no, I'm not going to stop, and you're going to listen, and I'm going to make you listen? Tammy.
Well, I think that you also have to know your audience. So if this is not the decision maker, you're just wasting your time. So very often I will ask to make sure I'm speaking to the right decision maker, get to that person as quickly as possible, because sometimes you get very frustrated. I know for me, I'm the first one to call to complain to customer service. We could do a 3-hour webinar on the things I've gotten for free for my confrontation to stores and different businesses. But I believe that you need to also cap that frustration. So you need to get to the decision maker, you need to explain your position, but you can't do all of the talking. You really need to make sure that person on the other side understands it. Because as you said, Mike, they always want to say no. They're scripted. Many people are scripted. How do you break that pattern? How do you interrupt it? You get them to start understanding your position. And if they're using their own words to explain your position, then you're almost there. You're like 90% there. If
So
you're
can we pause?
Forget about it.
Tam, can we pause? Because what Tammy is saying, perfect, right? Like, yes, so they're not listening, right? But by making them talk, right? Making them talk and talk about your position and ultimately get to your position, what'd you say? You're almost there, right? You're halfway there. So Tammy, right? How do you use, and I know the answer to this question, how do you use questions to break through when people aren't listening? Because aren't questions designed to make people talk? Like, that's confusing. How do you get people to listen by asking them questions and make them talk?
Well, I think you lead them down that path. You first want to know, do you understand what my position is? And you get them to reveal that they don't understand. And then they will ask you questions, because I think as human beings, we want to understand. And again, it's breaking that pattern. So as soon as you break through them saying no, and you engage them and they want to communicate with you like a human being, they know you're not going away. They want the problem to go away. So once they know you're committed and they say, okay, I need to start listening and understanding, they're going to ask their own questions. Because if they can't get rid of you, and they know you're not going away, they know you're not taking over an answer, they really don't have any other options. And again, and I think what's important when we touched on confrontation, yes, it can have a negative connotation, but confrontation does not have to be yelling, screaming, super highly aggressive. I mean, I'm very confrontational with being friendly. Like, when I would get on the phone with judges, I'm like, hey, how are you? I would spend, sometimes 90% of the call talking about what they were interested in, what they did that weekend, and my adversary would be on the phone and they were then trying to engage, but it wasn't the same. And that was a form of confrontation for me. Like, see me as a human being, understand my clients as a human being, and that was a tactic that I often use. So I think that
darkness hates light, lies hate truth. And most people, like, everybody thinks, oh, they're just liars, right? There are a lot of people that are just liars, but there's also a lot of people who lie to themselves and rationalize away the truth. And by asking them questions, by making them talk it through, they're forced to confront the things that they're saying. And Tammy has seen it, and I have seen it countless times. You ask a person to say something that is out of integrity, that they know is a lie, and you can actually see the hesitation as they start to speak. Sometimes the words will get caught in their throat, like literally the words will get caught in their throat. When you go, do you really believe that? Do you really think that? And they go, what? And you see the physical manifestation of them unable to force the lies out of their body. It just, you can see it physically. And, a lot of people go, oh, you've been doing this so long. Like, how could you tell they're lying? They actually manifest. Liars manifest. Like, they pause. If Tammy were to ask me a question that should be easy to answer, like, hey, Mike, what were you doing yesterday? And I go, and there's like a long pause, a manifestation. I can't hold my words in, right? Like, or I can't get them out. That could be indicative of lying, especially if you create a baseline where Tammy asks me a boatload of questions and I'm like, bah, 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 and she's like, question. I'm like, answer. And then she asks me a tough question. I go, and there's a pause. There's like a baseline that's created where you can start to tell when people are liars. So, and they don't necessarily need to be lying. They could be lying to themselves. Additionally, I think Tammy was always so good at confronting people with light, right? It wasn't aggressive. She was friendly. She was over the top energetic. She was downright bubbly, right? And so that light, right, that truthfulness made people confront themselves at the highest levels. And so she was then making them talk and say, like, do you really believe that position? They're like, no, I don't, this, and, I can't do this because, Tammy, come on, stop. And like, it was almost like this weird like process. Like, I used to listen to Tammy on the phone. People should be friendly and they're like yelling and screaming. And by the end of it, they're paying her hundreds of thousands of dollars to settle cases like that. We're like, that's a foregone conclusion. It's done. Tammy, give up on it. And she was like, no, I refuse to do it. And they would fight her tooth and nail, but she was able to confront people at the highest levels. And I think it's so important, the reason that I'm constantly talking about the relentlessness of people, the relentless, continuous, energetic push. It doesn't have to be overly skilled, right? Tammy was skilled. She combined skill and relentlessness to produce unique and amazing results. But skill is necessary, but you don't have to be a genius at it if you're doing it consistently and you're doing it relentlessly, because eventually people give up, right? Peter, you told me a beautiful story, right? I love this story. And I think we were offline about it, but you said that there was a time where you were international. I don't want to go into too many specifics. You were international and you were trying to get a contract with a person. And you were there every single day at 9:30, right? And you're like, take a meeting with me, take a meeting with me, take a meeting. And the guy was like, avoiding you, right? And then finally goes, what is it going to take to get like you out of my life already? And you were like, just sign the contract. It's not a bad deal for you. And what did the guy do?
He literally went, is that all it actually costs? That was, he'd never actually even looked at the price. Yeah, but It was the first agency I ran in Dubai. And because I was a kid and the internet didn't exist, I was told by my investors I need to write a sales plan. So I wrote down specifically, and I just want to give my previous self a big hug at this point. I actually wrote down the names of the companies I was going to sell to. I didn't say I'm going to earn this much per quarter in this industry. I literally, my sales plan was, I am going to sign the Crown Plaza in Abu Dhabi. Right. So when I then knocked on their door and they said no, I was like, shit, I've just told these people that have given me money, I'm going to sign these guys, and they've said no. Well, what am I going to do? And I had no sales training, no business training. I was literally, this was my first time running my own thing after about a year's worth of commercial experience as a developer. I'm like, well, I'm just going to come back. And I came back the next day at 9:30, and I came back the next day at 9:30, and 32 days later, he went, what is it going to take? What do I have to do to get you out of my office? And I just signed the deal. It's a good deal. He's like, I don't even need a website. What is the web? It was quite a while ago. But yeah, it's the person that wins is normally the person that's willing to stay to the end. Normally you're like, you know what, fair enough, you're willing to go to a place I'm not willing to go to, so let's just stop this before I reach my natural threshold.
Yeah, and you know, I will say this, that Tammy is kind of the personification of something, of a theory that I utilize when I'm putting myself in the right mindset to achieve an outcome, right, to shape or influence an outcome, and that is the theory of the persistent hunter, right? So before human beings had the technology to take down like a giant antelope or a deer from, you know, 100, 200, 300 feet out, they used the technique in hunting called endurance hunting or persistence hunting. And what they basically did was they went out in groups of 3 and they would find their prey, right? Let's say it's a 300 or 400 pound giant ox, whatever this thing is. Now, if the 3 of them were to encounter that thing in the wild, it would tear them to shreds, right? It would run them over, it would stampede them, it would crush them. And they used this technique where, you know, they didn't have the same biological advantages of this large prey, and they would go out and they would stalk this prey. And whenever the prey saw them, right, it goes, yeah, I don't want to fight these guys, I'm going to take off. And they would do things. They would make loud, they'd be boisterous, they'd be waving their spear in the air, and this thing would take off and it would run. And so what did this group of people do? Like, their prey just ran off faster than they can run. They stalked it, right? They tracked it. They had their canteens of water, right? Their hides and their skins full of water. You know, they were able to sweat over their body. They would just jog after this thing, and they would do it again and again and again over a period of hours until this thing was like, what in the world is going on? And then one person would set out and they would literally give chase. And they would give chase and they would give chase to this biologically larger creature, their prey, right? Whatever it was, whether it had sharper claws, sharper fangs, it was larger. And they would give chase until this thing just went thirsty, exhausted, and it would just lay down and it wouldn't even put up a fight because it was so tired. And they used relentlessness and they used persistence and they used endurance to wear down their opponent, their adversary, their prey, their mark, whoever it was they were working on, until they could just walk over and it was spear to the heart. And there was no fight, there was no nothing. It was the end of it. And so I use that mindset not because I see people as prey or that I see my opponents as prey. Resources don't matter when you have relentlessness, right? Resources don't matter when you have relentlessness. If you go toe to toe with a bear, you're gonna get mauled. If you are able to exhaust the bear, even though it's larger, more powerful, has claws, can maul you, can rip you to shreds, is faster, can climb trees, you now have the advantage because you can outlast them, right?
You don't need to go back in history for your example, Mike, because I had this tour of a wildlife sanctuary a couple of years ago for a birthday. And we saw like cheetahs, leopards, lions, tigers. It was amazing. A great day. Gorillas. And we got to the last enclosure and she said, this is the most deadly predator in nature. Mm-hmm. Like, okay. And we walked in and it's 3 wolves. I'm like, sorry?
Yep.
And she went, these animals have the highest percentage kill rate of around 98.5% of every time they hunt they succeed. And I'm like, well, how do they do it? And they said, they just keep running. I'm like, sorry? And they're like, a wolf can run at 30 miles an hour for the equivalent of 2 marathons. So they can run 30 miles an hour for 50 miles. That's the only skill they have. Right? If any of the animals actually stopped and turned around, they could probably beat the wolf.
Yeah.
But they don't. They do exactly what you described. They keep running, and eventually they keel over. And the wolves just go behind and just go, I'm just going to stay here. I'm just going to keep running until you decide you've had enough. And then once you've had enough, then I'm going to eat.
Yeah. And I think it's funny, Peter, that you say that, because that's why dogs were part of hunting parties, because dogs can't keep up, right? That's why we domesticated wolves. Don't look at like the Chihuahuas and the Shar-Peis and like those dogs, but like actual hunting dogs. Like you have in Japan, you have the Akita Inus, right? You have the Belgian Malinois of today, the German Shepherds, dogs that were bred for that purpose. And they ran right alongside with us. Now, look, they can't carry water. We can, but we can keep them hydrated, but they can run faster and run and chase endurance-wise exactly the way that we do. And so that mentality, and it was a mentality that Tammy either consciously or unconsciously deployed whenever she was trying to obtain results, to shape or influence a result. It's something that she deployed because she wouldn't stop. You're like, Tammy, it's enough. You're not going to do it. And she's like, no, I refuse. I'm not going to give up. And she would wear people down in love. They loved to talk to her, but she wore them down. And they were like, enough. What will it take, Tammy? And probably some people didn't even want to settle because you listen to them in ways that other people don't listen to them. And so they love talking to you. And they're like, Tammy, can we find another case, please? I can't settle this one with you. Right? Did that ever happen to you, Tammy?
Absolutely. And even you, Michael, you would say, you make me do things that nobody else can make me do.
Yes, that is very true.
It wasn't just my adversaries. It was everybody. Nobody was spared. But because I believe if it can happen, you need to tell me a reason why it shouldn't. Yeah. That's ultimately what I put back on you. And I think that's what you do with the questions. That's what you do with, don't be afraid to pause when you're communicating with somebody. Like, pausing, silence is good because that means the other person is thinking and possibly listening, and then they're going to speak next. Don't think you need to fill the entire conversation with your arguments, because at some point it will fall on deaf ears and people will tune you out.
Yeah. And by the way, most people argue exactly like that, right? This person says this point, this person says this point, this person says this point, and it's just declaratory statements, right? Like, Tammy, you're wrong because, and you go, Michael, that's wrong because, right? And Tammy utilizes the following skill. Why do you think that's true? And then people go, well, what do you mean? Why do I think that's true? I said it. Well, break it down for me. Like, what's your basis? What's your belief for that? And they either respond by starting to answer, or if they don't have an answer, they don't answer, or they become defensive, like, well, I'm not going to answer your questions, or like, what does that mean? I don't understand. One of the most powerful questions that you can ask people, is probably the least asked question of all, is why, right? Like, why do you believe that? And then you really begin to challenge their mentalities. Like somebody will say something like, well, hospitals are making tons of money right now because everybody's treating under, because of the COVID-19. So I shouldn't be worried about hospitals and them being able to meet their revenue obligations and things of that nature, right? Right? And that's a declaratory statement. And then Tammy would respond with something like this. Go ahead, Tammy.
I would say, yes, we have to take all the COVID patients, but we're also not seeing any regular patients, especially elective surgeries. So of course, we're not seeing as much money. And then I would say, why do you think that?
Boom, right? Boom. Well, why do you think that? And then you have to come to the conclusion. You have to actually support your conclusion. And there's so many layers of the onion that could be peeled away by just keep asking why questions. So Tammy could go, well, why do you believe that? And I go, well, because they're bringing in a whole lot of patients. And then Tammy can say something along the lines of, well, why do you think this is, revenue generating for the hospitals? And I go, well, because there's just a lot of patients and they all have to pay. Well, why do you think that they have to pay? Well, because then they don't get treated. Well, what's your understanding about whether or not the hospital has an obligation to treat patients, whether they can pay or not? Well, The hospital doesn't have to, they could reject people. Well, are you familiar with any of the federal laws that, govern in this situation and whether hospitals actually do reject patients when they're unhealthy? And then you're beginning to break the person down, and she's not making any declaratory statements. She's just asking questions. Why? Further questions. And so those are probably the most powerful things. And I think that's how, at least one of the tools that Tammy had used to be as successful as she was in terms of producing amazing results. So look, this was a little bit of a runaway conversation. Go ahead, Peter.
I want to stick on legal, but I also want to bring this back for a second because I want to just do a little test because I think this can really help some people. Mike, what is your why?
Do you mean why am I doing this, or why do I do what I do?
Why do you do what you do?
Oof, that is a deep question. As a young child, I grew up in a situation where I was heavily victimized. I grew up in the projects, and as a result of that, I saw people bullied. I was bullied. My friends were bullied. And in a lot of different ways, there's a feeling of injustice and a lack of voice and a lack of ability to make change. And I think that probably galvanized me to take a stand and to become the kind of person who has a voice to make change, to make sure that the victimized don't continue to be victimized, that I can be the greatest advocate for them and to give them access to a world, the legal system, that is usually very costly, very difficult, to get justice through in the most unique and efficient way humanly possible.
Okay. Tammy, what's your why?
I think about this often, and I think that for me, I believe from a very young age that I can affect change. And I grew up thinking everybody felt the same way. And as I got older, I saw that that's not true, that many people are fine just keeping things status quo, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there are people here in our world who, we have a duty. I feel a duty. If I hear about an injustice, I think, what can I do about it? I mean, it affects me to the core, more than maybe some other sad things that happen in the world. My first thought is, what can I do about it? So it doesn't matter if it's something that's within my reach, but that's always my first thought. And I just feel that I will never feel, complete in this world unless I'm constantly on a mission to affect change and be on the right side of that change, whatever it is, whether it's legally, socially, anything.
So the reason I asked you both that is because I'm willing to bet a whole host of money that anybody that just heard that would never bet against either of you. And we're talking about the power of questions that we ask other people, but one of our hacks of the other day is that words have power, not just over other people, but also over yourself. Your ears hear your own words, and your brain trusts you more than any other individual in the world. So if you say things, your brain trusts them. So I just wanted to bring it back to, these questions are amazingly powerful to ask other people, but they are probably even more powerful if you ask yourself. So anyone that's listening to this, if you're struggling or you've got issues right now, ask yourself, what is my why? Why do I wake up in the morning? Why do I want to do what I want to do? And it can change, right? It can change every month. It can change every day. But understanding and dialing into why is I haven't met a single person that I regard as a success that doesn't know the answer to that question. Not one single person that I've met that's successful can't answer that question like that. And people that I see struggling in business or struggling in their relationships or struggling as a parent, when you ask that question, they hesitate. And they go, well, and you go, you gotta understand that, like, because just take the relationships, being a husband, being a wife. It's not all plain sailing. There's going to be days when you want to, I want to kill you right now. And if you remember your why, you remember why you love that person, why you want to support that person, why that person makes your heart sore, then you see past that little transgression, that little thing that upset you, and you remember the bigger picture. Same with your business, same with your children. So I don't want to not make this illegal on the side of things, because there's amazing value from Tammy and yourself, Mike. But as you were saying that, I was just reflecting, going, these questions are just so important, not just for other people, but for ourselves as well.
Yeah. And I think, Peter, what you have just so beautifully leaned into is actually one of the most critical pieces that help people to achieve outcomes, right? Because confrontation isn't always easy. It's challenging, right? Including confronting yourself at the highest levels. And so when you set an outcome, especially if it's big enough, right, it's gonna be challenging to get there. And you are more likely to walk away from that challenge, to not confront yourself, to not make it through to the other side of the obstacle, of the challenge that you're facing, if you don't have a powerful why. If you are a go with the flow kind of person, where does the flow take you? On the path of least resistance. You have to encounter resistance and have a why and a purpose powerful enough to overcome that to get to outcome. And so the people who you do see who are successful, the people who are tenacious and relentless and produce the results like Tammy is, have to have a powerful why, because the challenges that they encountered in order to get from where they were to who they are now requires a knowledge of that powerful purpose. Because when you're struggling and you're under stress, it's your why that gets you through it. It's
yeah,
that
you can't walk away from it. It's bigger.
Yeah.
It's like, when someone said to me the other day, you had Mankind doing really well, you got 5,000 followers. I was polite. I'm like, yeah, thanks very much. And in my head, I'm going, it's not 500 million, is it? Right. So wake up in the morning. It's like, am I at 500 million? No. Right. Let's get at it. Okay. What's the next thing I need to solve? What's the next thing I need to face to get me to that why? And as I said, every single person that you ask that of that's a success can answer that question straight away.
Yeah. And so I think what we have stumbled upon is a deep knowledge of asking powerful questions. And whether you are in, the medical recovery space or the representation of hospital space, whether you are in the business space and trying to achieve results, or you're trying to shape and influence outcomes, the questions you ask, and the higher the quality of the question that you ask, the higher quality and better result the answer is going to give you. And so I just want to say, I want to give you, Peter, the second to last final word, and I want to give Tammy the final word before we wrap up here.
Or as a mutual friend of ours says, the final word.
Yes.
So I just want to say thanks to everyone that's here. We do have a question. If you could touch on that quickly, Michael, if we do have a second, that'd be fantastic. Everyone here, thank you so much for joining us. The first-time responders that hear this or are here, my heart goes out to you, as does Michael and Tammy's. The debt you give us is phenomenal, and we could not be more grateful. Every first-line responder at hatmankind.com is free for life. By that, we mean doctors, nurses, EMTs, teachers, police officers, and firefighters. And we're also welcoming our first 1,000 people for free as well right now. So www.hatmankind.com. Come and sign up and hear more amazing content from people like Michael. We have a panelist every day, loads going on. We'd love to see you. And thank you so much, Tammy, for joining us. From my side, it's a very, very different world for me, because obviously we have a very different healthcare system in the UK. So just even that side of it's very interesting, listening to the different challenges that are presented to different cultures at these times. So thank you so much.
And by the way, Peter, I will take that question because it's a little bit complicated. I'll take it offline. So I'm gonna tell me directly. But Tammy, why don't you have the final word?
I want to say thank you for inviting me. This was a lot of fun. It's great meeting you, Peter, and it's always great talking to you, Michael. I also want to thank all of our frontline workers, and our essential workers that are really allowing us to live so comfortably. And I know many people are, we're frustrated if you're home, with your kids, you're quarantined. But I think it's important, now more than ever, that, you can use this time to confront yourself and ask these questions about why, because the more connected you are to a purpose for yourself, I promise you it will be easier to get through this. And, let's think about those people who are working on the front lines as essential workers in the grocery stores, everything that they're doing to keep the world, running right now. Well, many of us get to be safe in our homes. They must be very connected to some why. And that's what gives them that strength. And that's something that we're all capable of. So I think this was a great opportunity to, talk about that. Don't forget to always be your own advocate. That will help you, connect even more to the things that you want. But thank you. This is great.
Yeah, awesome. And so I am going to take the final because Tammy had teed this up for me. Let's take care of our frontline workers. A colleague of mine is running a really fantastic campaign right now called Hospitality, which is feeding the frontline workers in New York City and the surrounding areas. So please, let's have, Krista, can we just paste that message inside of the chat? It's Hospitality. If you go to the FundMe page and GoFundMe and you type in feeding the frontline, or you go on my Facebook or my wife's Facebook, who's helping with this campaign, all donations go directly to feeding the healthcare workers in the New York City and surrounding areas. And so we want to make sure that we're taking care of our frontline workers, some of which are at the hospitals that Tammy is a part of. And so as always, Michael Smikun for Hack Mankind here, your relentless guardian, helping to shape and influence outcomes. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.